So till now what we have done is, if we wanted to create any container, the command which we used is sudo docker run, and with some options we used to give the image name from which we need to create a container. So if I want to create a first container, I'll use this command. If I want again one more container, I'll use this command. Means the images changes, or just the name hyphen hyphen name, we can give the container one, then the image name nginx, then container 2 if you want container 2, then if you want container 3, like this we can create n number of containers, okay, using docker run command. But in production scenario, sometimes if we need more than means many containers, like maybe more than 5 or 6, okay, and we also want to store or keep the copy of the containers configuration files, how it is created, that is also possible. And the solution for that is, create for creating multiple containers using single file is docker compose. Okay, so if you want to create multiple containers, we can do that using docker compose, and the command for that we just need to create a YML file called docker-compose.yml. So how we create docker compose file is, we just create docker-compose.yml, and after that we can run some various commands like docker compose up, okay, to start and run the containers. If you want to stop the containers and remove the containers, we can use the command docker compose down. If you want to create an image and run that particular container, that is also possible using docker compose build. Then if you want to see the running containers, we can use docker compose ps command. If you want to go inside the containers, we can use docker compose exe, okay. And if you want to restart the containers, docker compose restart is also possible. If you want to see the logs, then docker compose logs is also possible. So let's see a small practical example, then it will be more clear. Okay, so we need to install that service. For working with the docker compose, we'll have to restart that particular create means install that particular service. So the command for that is sudo docker apt get install docker compose. So I think it is already installed here. So it will say that it is already installed. For you that may not be the case, okay. So docker compose is already installed here. So what I'll do is I'll just do the cleanup first. Sudo docker ps hyphen a, there is nothing, it's good. Docker compose images. Okay, so the two images are there, I'll remove those. rmi hyphen f. So there are no images and no containers. So generally what we do is we just create a directory. In this case, I'll create a multi-container directory. We can create with any name. Okay. And inside that multi-container directory, I'll create a Docker compose file. Okay. So this is the Docker compose file which we are creating. Cat docker hyphen compose dot yml. Okay. So I'll quickly explain this file. So what we are doing here is we are creating two containers using this file. First container name is nginx, okay, and the other container name is MySQL. And suppose and in this Docker Compose, we give the names to the containers as services. Means the containers are called services in Docker Compose. So the first service which we are installing is Nginx, and the other one is MySQL. So the version 3 is the latest one which Docker Compose is following. So we need to just mention it here. So version 3 of Docker Compose we are using. The services which we are trying to install are Nginx and MySQL. For starting the container, okay, it will use image nginx, okay, and for starting the mysql it will use mysql 5.7. It will map port 80 of the host to the port 80 inside the container, okay. And whenever we install mysql, we need a mysql password, right, a root password. Like the whenever we install any windows operating system or linux, we need to define the root password at the time of installation, right, root or admin password. Similarly, when we install mysql, we need to give means the root password. And in this case, the root password we are asking it to set is mysql password. So how to run this file? Sudo docker compose up, okay, and run it in a detached mode so that the terminal is means will not be occupied and nothing will show on the screen. It will run in the background, okay. So whenever I do docker compose up -d, okay, it will start creating the container. So the first line it saw is nginx, so it is just downloading the nginx, pulling the nginx image, and it will start the containers after that.
This MySQL doesn't need a port need to be mapped
No, no.
for
For in this exercise, we are not mapping it, but it we can map it.
okay.
So we have one of the exercises in future where we have mapped it. Okay, it downloaded both the images and now creating containers. So what it does is sometimes it means most of the times it will take the containers directory, okay, as the container name as well if you do not give the name. So sudo docker ps, if you do the sudo docker ps, it will show the two containers are running. One is nginx, the other one is mysql. So here inside the container it is running on 3306. Outside we haven't mapped it, but the nginx is container running on port 8080 on the host and port 80 inside the container. So we can just quickly test it. Curl localhost 8080. Okay. Similarly, to go inside the container, we'll need its container ID. Okay, because for MySQL we haven't defined any outside port, so we'll need its container ID. So as at the backend it is installing uh, Docker container itself. So if you do docker ps sudo, we'll see two containers are running. Okay, we can get the output using docker ps and a detailed output using docker ps. So at the backend it just ran the docker daemon itself to create the containers. So we need to go inside the mysql container. The command would be sudo docker exec -it /bin bash. Okay, so what was the command which it's the root password which we defined was mysql password, my password. Just to mysql, it will ask for password. So -p, enter the password, and we are on the mysql screen. Show databases. It will show the databases list. So this is how we create multiple containers using Docker Compose file. So if we need, we can have a backup of it on the GitHub as well. So we'll just copy this docker-compose.yml on the GitHub page, okay, or in our repository. And whenever we need it, or whenever we want to means give this configuration file to anyone else, we can give our docker compose YML file link to anyone, and they can just create their containers using this file. So this was all about Docker Compose.